You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGachy, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hey, what is up? Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. You personally. Thank you very much for tuning into this episode. Every download matters over here. So, thank you very much. This is a really fun conversation. I really enjoyed talking with Danny. He's a great dude and a listener of the show, which was even cooler. It's always cool to talk to somebody who actually listens, which is kind of mind-blowing. Anyhow, I don't want to do too much jibber-jabber and get in the way of this most excellent episode, but I do want to remind everyone, as we get into the holidays and you're going to be doing some shopping for yourself or for some loved ones or for some bandmates, whatever the case may be, if you could use my links, that would be most appreciated. If you're going to be getting anything from Sweetwater, they really help out a lot, honestly. They're very kind with their percentages that they share with this show. So if you could go to tonemob.com/Sweetwater for any of those purchases, whether it's a pack of picks or whether it's a brand new custom shop Gibson, it really helps out a lot when you use that link to make those purchases. On the other hand, they don't carry everything, but if you can't find it there, you can definitely find it on Reverb, and they help out the show as well. So if you could go to tonemob.com/Reverb for any of your Reverb purchasing needs, that would be great. And I know some listeners have asked whether that works in the app, and the workaround for that is to put everything in your cart in the app and then use the link and check out through the browser. I know it's a pain, but it really does help quite a bit for this little show. So thank you very much for anyone who is going to do that. Okay, let's get this jibber jabber finished and get into some actual quality jibber jabber with Mr. Danny Black. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Danny Black.
Hello.
From his solo project and Good Old War. So, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing so well. It's so good to be here.
I wish you were here. Like here.
I do too. I'm sort of pretending that we're standing face to face and talking here.
It sounds like we are, so I'm going to pretend that too. It makes me feel better.
The irony is that I'm actually in my van.
Really? In your van?
Which is a very unusual place to record a podcast, but yes.
It's not as
in Colorado.
It's not as unusual as you might think it is.
Yeah, I guess not. Not anymore. You have to get out there where you can.
I recorded my very first episode on a hillside in a forest above Portland. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, we have a lot in common then.
Oh yeah? Do we?
Oh yeah. Yeah, as long as we're somewhere remote trying to work with technology, then we're very similar.
Okay, good. We're in the same boat. So, man, for the listeners, maybe we should get into your story first. Let's take the journey.
Great.
Where did you start? I know I've listened to your work off and on throughout the years, so I was very excited to have you on the show. And I spent the morning listening to your latest record, which is very good. So,
oh, thank you.
I'm excited about this. But let's take the listeners on the journey. When did you start playing guitar, and how did it lead you down this crazy musical journey that you've been on?
Well, I grew up in Philly, and my parents were Orthodox Jews when I was a kid, and it's basically like kind of like a hippie commune, but in the city. And my dad plays guitar, and everybody pretty much just sang songs all the time. And I wanted to be like him, and I wanted to. I think they would get me like plastic guitars, and I would pretend, and I was always kind of in my room pretending to be in a band, and they noticed pretty quickly. So around 8, they got me a guitar and some lessons, and I was hooked. There was really never a point. You know how some people sort of like search around for what they want to do. I never really had that moment. I never really had a choice. This was always what I was going to do. I was always going to be a musician from the instant I was like, aware of life. And so I started playing really early. By the time I was in 6th grade, I was already in a few bands and, with whatever kids I could find. By high school, I was pretty much in all the bands that were in the school because everybody needed a guitar player or a bass player or somebody who actually knew how to sing harmonies. So I pretty much joined bands with kids of all ages, the seniors, even though I was this tiny little freshman. And yeah, I started touring up and down the East Coast with my bands. But when I say tour, it's more like, we played every VFW hall that you could possibly find.
That counts.
And yeah, it counts. Yeah. And there was a really cool community of that in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. A lot of great bands. And like we would play shows with bands like Bouncing Souls and Bigwig and all these like pretty large punk bands because they were playing the same circuit. And they just somehow broke out of it. But, I feel kind of lucky that none of my bands back then actually did anything because we were all like these punk bands, and imagine being like 40 and playing in a punk band. That would be really brutal.
It would be hard on the joints.
Yeah, it would. I don't think I could jump around like that anymore. But yeah, so I did that for a long time and played in kind of every band. I ended up moving up to Vermont at one point and working at Magic Hat Brewery, and I was just playing in every band, and I never really considered it to be a possibility that I could actually make a living of it until I met Keith and Tim from Good Old War, and we found out that we could actually do it. And Keith already had like a record deal, and when I joined that band, a lot of the infrastructure was already there, so I really just had to sort of fit in. Which I felt really lucky. And obviously at that point we immediately hit the road. We made a record, and we made a record with Anthony Green too. And then we just hit the road right away and stayed on the road for 10 years. And then at some point in there, I decided that I wanted to do kind of an instrumental thing with my guitar. And I ended up making a couple records like that and getting to tour a lot with that. And, and then that'll lead us to the new record, which we can talk about.
Yeah, that is exactly where I wanted to go with it, because I listened to both things. I actually wasn't as familiar with your instrumental stuff until I knew you were going to come on the show, and I was like, oh, I gotta brush up a little bit here, and and then I got to the new record just this morning actually. And I was like, oh yeah, I really need to check this out. So I went for a little walk and put it on. And I was like, oh, this is completely different.
Well, it's just in time because it did come out just yesterday, so you're not late.
Oh, good. I actually wondered. I'm like, why? I was like, because normally I would have started with the latest record for a guest that was going to come on the show, and I was like, how did I miss this? I'm like, oh no, I'm kind of an idiot, so I could have missed it.
Well, it's amazing. I've been wanting to come on, so I'm doing all instrumental guitar music, so I definitely want to talk about all that stuff with you. I've been wanting to, so I'm excited to be here for that.
Yeah, that's not even a place that I started exploring when it's in a completely different way than what you do it. But for me, I always thought like songs, lyrics, vocals, like that was always like the focus for me in a lot of my early stuff. And it wasn't until I started messing with more pedals and effects and doing more ambient, weirder things that I really started thinking of instrumental music as something that I would even like to be involved with.
Right.
And it's not because I didn't appreciate it or didn't like think that it was cool. It was just like for me and the way my brain works, that wasn't how songs were fabricated in my brain.
Right. For sure.
Was it a really hard shift for you to go from like the Good Old War stuff to that, or how did that transition take place?
Yeah, well, that's actually kind of interesting because I'm the same as you. I mean, Keith and I write all the songs in Good Old War, and so that's very much, if I sit down to write a song, that's what comes out. Songs with harmonies and lots of lyrics and really melodic music. So I would have thought that it would have been a hard shift to go instrumental, but for some reason it really just poured out of me, and I had a lot to say, I guess, and I also have a lot of different sides that I didn't really realize a lot of like more diverse interests that I didn't really realize until I started getting going on it. That I was like, oh. I really love to do really complicated 12-string pieces, and and all acoustic stuff, and then looping and stuff in interesting time signatures and more proggy stuff, and then also set these set these kind of soundscapes for that could be in a movie, things like that. It's always I'm always picturing a movie scene in my head. So it ended up being kind of surprisingly easy to shift that way.
Have you actually done anything with film?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done some, I've had a bunch of songs used, and recently I started working on a film it's like a documentary that's being worked on now. And I wrote a song for a movie just over this quarantine too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Can you reveal anything about those?
Not yet. They're still in the works, but I will. I'll be very excited to talk about them.
That's cool. That's excuse me. That's something I've always wanted to do.
Me too.
I've always wanted to work on sounds for a movie. I've always wanted to do that. But like, I'm also a dummy, and I couldn't I could make the music, right? But like, I couldn't write out a score.
Yeah. Hey,
some people can.
You can use MIDI and all sorts of programs now. We have a lot of help for us dummies.
That's what I need. I need so much help. So much help.
Yeah.
Is the process for creating music around? So how did it work? Did you just get told about what it is, and then you just kind of have to fabricate it yourself, or do you watch the final edit and you're like, okay, I'm going to add this part here and this part here? How does that work?
Kind of both. If it's a song, then they'll give you kind of a brief of what the scene's about, and kind of a few rough ideas of what But if they're hiring you, then they know what you do.
Right.
A little bit. So they're assuming that it's going to sound a certain way, and they trust that if you understand what you should be writing lyrics about, then you're gonna kind of match the mood to those lyrics in that way. But I've done some trailers and things like that, and that's really fun because you actually just score right to it. So they'll give you a timestamp and just be like, okay, at 10 seconds this happens, and then at 30 seconds this happens, and you just kind of try to fit your music to exactly what they ask for. And that's a really fun challenge. I think any musician being asked to write is always fun. But I found too, with film, most of the film composers that really seem to do well at this point are basically just going wah. They just hold the note. So I'm trying to do something a little bit more organic and a little bit more acoustic, but that's what works most of the time. So learning how to make kind of ambient soundscapes is a big part of it.
I have pedals for that.
Yes, you do. I'm sure you do.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Strymon.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Strymon. Thank you, Chase Bliss.
Yep.
Yeah, it was actually, that's kind of, I've talked about this on the show a few times, but that's something that I use almost as a form of meditation or relaxation. I don't do it as often as I used to maybe a year ago, but it'd be the way I'd close out a day would be I go grab a bunch of random effects and plug in and just see what happens.
Oh, it's the best.
And sometimes it was cool and sometimes it was lame, but I actually did it just this last Halloween. And because I'd talked about it so many times, I was I'm actually going to record this. I'd never really recorded any of those just kind of zone out sessions before.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it on YouTube. And of course, because, YouTube algorithms, it's the worst performing video I've ever posted. But
right.
It is out there for anybody who's wondering what I mean when I say I do that.
I will be checking it out, sir.
YouTube. I'll shoot you the link when we're done with
Please
this.
do.
I'll make it easy on you.
Please do.
But let's talk about your rig. So I know Good Old War is, most people think of it as very acoustic driven, and a lot of your music is very acoustic driven that I've listened to anyway. But the new record, a little less so. There's a little more going on there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and acoustic, I've worked really hard to develop a sound and tones on that as well. So, I do have a partnership with Taylor, and they have a certain something that seems to work with the way that I play. And I think that they have a certain reputation that does not actually say what they really are like now. They're just becoming this incredible guitar company. And I know that they've always been known as very bright, but if you play very, if you're mixing melodies and chords at the same time, you really can't get a much better guitar that can speak that way and fit into a mix with a full band. So I play Taylor 12 strings and 6 string, and then I use Fishman pickups for that live, and that's been amazing.
Do you use any effects when you're playing acoustically?
No, I really don't. I just use the Fishman Rare Earth humbucker pickups, and I put them in every single guitar I have, and I have a lot. And they really do it for me. And then I really do believe, like, if you have a good sound guy, and the same pickups for every guitar, it really is pretty easy to sound great as long as you can play.
Therein lies the hard
Yeah,
work.
exactly.
I'm still working on
Same, always. And if we stop working on it, we're probably doing it wrong.
That's true. I was talking with Brian Fallon. He's become a good buddy since he's been on the show, and we nerd out on gear stuff all the time. But he texted me a while back. He was like, "I'm got a lesson. I'm working on lessons." I'm like, "Oh, interesting that like even somebody as prolific as yourself." I didn't say it exactly like that,
Right.
but like, wow, you're taking lessons. That's cool. And he's like, "Yeah, man. How do you become Bruce Lee?"
Right, exactly.
I was like, that's a good
And
point.
he's a great guy. We've toured with him a fair amount, and we toured with Gaslight Anthem and him solo in Europe, and he has been very good to us as well. So I know he's a great guy.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
fantastic. That was one of the big crazy turning points for me in the show was we actually like got to meet him, and we got to go record with him on his bus when they did the 10-year 59 sound reunion here a couple of years
Right.
ago. And my wife and I are huge fans, so it was like, what are we doing? that was like her moment when it was like, I think this podcasting thing is actually
It's actually a thing.
I was like, I know.
It's
It
what's
is a
funny,
thing.
and this will date us, is that the tour that Good Old War opened for Gaslight Anthem was the 59 Sound Tour. It shows you how long we've
Okay.
been doing this for.
I was trying to think of where I got introduced to you
It could be
guys.
then, yeah.
There's a good chance it was
Yeah.
that, because I knew that I'd been following you for a while, but I was like, what? Where? Usually I can pinpoint it. Sometimes I can remember, oh yeah, I started following them right around then. I saw them with this band, but you guys, I was like, it's a little murkier.
Yeah.
I think it was like multiple touch points, and I just eventually started
I think that
listening.
would make a lot of sense. I think we're one of those bands that kind of like lives in the ether. It's like sometimes I feel like we're one of those bands that has songs that kind of show up places, and people are like, "Oh, I know that band. What are they called again?" And that's always kind of been. We've always lived in that zone, which I always thought was really cool. Those are the kinds of bands I really like. Those bands that you're just like, I like all those songs. Maybe I should get into that band.
Right. It's like every time I hear it, it makes me
Right.
happy. Why have I not? Like I gotta
We
get the
will
record.
win you
Like,
over
what's
no
going
matter
on?
what you do. Eventually.
Eventually, we'll lure you back
Exactly.
in. So I want to go back just a little bit. I think a lot of people probably got introduced to you, speaking on this same line of thinking, through you working with Anthony Green.
Uh-huh.
How did that come about, and what was that like?
Well, actually, he helped us get started in the first place. So when Keith decided that he wanted to, Keith is the singer of Good Old War, and he decided that Days Away was kind of not going to be doing it anymore. And I had met him, and we kind of hit it off, and he felt like I was going to be a good partner for him as far as writing and playing acoustic guitar and singing harmony just seemed to be kind of the direction he wanted to go anyway. And that was already where I was headed as it was. So we made a really good team. And so he's always been friends with Anthony. They grew up together, and same with Tim. So they all grew up together playing VFW halls and things like that too, in a different part of Philly. And so when Anthony was making his album Avalon, even before we even started making ours, he invited us over to be his band for that record. And he just had a lot of faith in us really early on. And before we even really knew what we were going to sound like, I think we actually kind of developed our sound on that album, and it helped us decide, oh, okay, this is what we're actually capable of. So when we went to make our record, I think it was nice because we'd already had some time in the studio together.
Yeah, that's very helpful. That's really cool that he was, behind you guys from day one. That's very, very helpful when you have somebody of his caliber that believes in you and is, I guess kind of helping you along.
Yeah,
the
and
way.
if I'm being totally honest, I was
powerful.
in a totally different world, country and folky and even like old punk rock world. So I wasn't even aware of his. When we were making the record, I did not
Right.
know. Oh, okay, we're gonna go play for a lot of people, and you know, I was not. I was really. It was very innocent.
Was it shocking? Was it like, oh wow, there's a bunch of people here.
Yeah, I
Look
was
at all
sort
these
of like,
kids.
oh, he's got fans. Oh yeah, Circa Survive. I've heard of them. And I was probably the
Right.
latest to the game of anybody. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's cool though.
Yeah.
That is very cool. And it kind of probably was, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like that would have been a really interesting shift, because let me back up a little bit. I'm mumbling. So like my background is all over the place. I very much grew up with country and that kind of music, and then kind of wedged my way into the punk scene later on. And I've always had this, I would be like that guy walking around with like, an Under Oath shirt and a cowboy hat.
Right.
And people would be very confused
Right.
by
Right.
me. And so was it weird going from that world to, I don't even know what scene you would say Circa Survive.
Yeah, I guess
fans
the
were
kind
part
of emo world.
the scene,
I
quote
had kind
unquote.
of been totally unaware of it. So once we started, I guess, being included in that world, I always felt a little bit out of place because I didn't know any of the bands. I sort of had to learn, oh, okay, this band is from here and they do this. And because people would reference other bands to try to, include us in that world. But I always felt that we were an outlier. And we were on a label called Sargent House, which is this awesome math rock label, and we're this folky indie, very kind of fun sing-along kind of band. And we definitely have our complicated moments, but we have always lived in this world where we're like, we never really quite fit into any of the places that we've been put. So I think that that's partially on me, because I didn't really know the scene at all. So it was a little bit of a culture shock, I would say. But the thing is that was so amazing about it is that like kids who were fans of Anthony and Circa, those are the people that have stuck with us since they were, in 8th grade, following them and became fans of ours. And they're still fans of ours now that they have kids and they're grown up. It's really, they're the best fans in the world.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely my generation. I'm on the older end of that, but I still very much have followed bands from that era and still am a huge fan of that stuff. So I can relate to those fans. I get it.
That's great. Well, hopefully we grew up together, although, we're obviously older than those kids, we were adults when we started the band.
Right. So let's talk about the new record a little bit. There's
please.
More electric going on. Tell me about your rigs and what were you doing on that thing?
Okay. Well, every song started with Ryan Zamaro, who's the drummer in this band Vacationer. If you haven't heard him, you have to listen to that band. They're incredible. That is Kenny Vasoli's band, who was in that band Starting Line, but they're a completely different sound, very vibey and summery, and they're just an awesome, awesome band. But so Ryan is the drummer, and he and I started jamming together at the studio space. And I just always heard him and thought, man, if I could just take some of his beats home, I could probably make a record. He's just so inspiring. So I actually did. I asked him to come over one day and I recorded him with one microphone and just put it right in front of him and gave him some click tracks for, an hour or two. And he just played. And I had all these tracks and I just started cutting them up and writing songs over them. And so every song started with bass, and I would hear a bass line over, because that's what we would usually jam, drum and bass. And so I would usually try to pick a tone that I thought would match the drum beat. So I ended up doing a lot more kind of distorted bass. And I found that recording my bass, I have a Fender Mustang, like a 70s Fender Mustang bass. So it's small, short scale bass.
Cool.
And I would always put it through, my Strymon Riverside, pretty much, and give it a little bit of grit, not a ton, but sometimes more than others. And then into guitar amps. I'd often use like a Quilter amp. I don't know if you are familiar with those, but they're basically like as transparent as you could possibly get. And I really like
Quilter stuff.
Oh, great. Yeah. So I really like a bass through a guitar amp on recording, obviously not live, but on recording, I think they record extremely well that way, because you get all the frequencies that you actually want and none of that heavy low bass that you can't actually do anything with. And I find that with bass, if you actually want it to come through on a recording, the low end actually gets covered by a lot of other stuff. So you kind of want to stick with kind of that mid range, and the guitar amps do that really well, and obviously the Riverside. And then for guitars, I used a few. I had I have this like surf green Strat that has the most amazing tremolo system you've ever heard. Like I can dip it down. So a lot of the time you might hear like kind of like a white noise kind of sound, and that's actually just my whammy bar just depressed all the way and strumming it. And I can do this like very high pitched things with it. Like I kind of try to do like the squeals, but without the Eddie Van Halen kind of squeals. I have my own sort of version of it. So a lot of the noises, that's all guitar. It's not synth or anything like that. And really pretty simple. I use Strymon pedals, so I use the Riverside and the Big Sky, and I'll use some flange or some phaser here and there, but it's all pedals. There's nothing in the box that I'm adding to anything.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I'm a big pedal fan, and so I've long said like you can do almost anything with guitar pedals these days, and there's
I
new
agree.
things being created all the time. It's so fun.
Yeah, and also like you can play to the tone. I guess I'm a little old school in that I don't do things in the box unless it really like maybe if you have to do something to your vocal or whatever, I understand. But for guitars and bass, it's so cool what you can actually do going in. And if you get the tone right in the first place, it just saves everybody time. And I also really like small amp. I really like very small amps, and even kind of like cheap old Fenders or those Fenders that have those built-in effects can be really interesting on recording, and they sit in mixes really nicely.
So you like small amps?
I love small amps. I only travel with small amps. I only have small amps. I've gotten rid of all the big amps that I've had over the years.
Interesting. Yeah, I like both. But I tend to stick around. The amp I play the most is definitely my Benson Vincent, which is about a 30 watter, which I wouldn't call huge, but it's not small.
No, I mean, you need a big place for that kind of volume in general to even make it sing. You can make a small amp sing around, you can turn one of these small amps up to 10 and not be bothering anybody. And they do the same thing. Honestly, I learned a lot of that from studying, bands like Zeppelin and stuff. Like, why does the guitar sound huge? And Jimmy Page is playing through champs.
Right.
So I realized like, and some of my favorite tones just come out of small amps mic'd to sound big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think especially these days with the way sound systems are, it's unless you just need it to sometimes you need that kind of volume to play the way you want to play and feel the way you want to feel. But if you don't, there's almost no reason for traveling with a full stack these days.
Right. I mean, one of my favorite stories is that Keith, who plays guitar in the band, every once in a while he'll play like 2 or 3 parts that I can't play if I'm playing acoustic. He'll play like the solos that I have to play a rhythm guitar under or whatever. And we did this big tour with with Alison Krauss and Union Station, and we're playing these massive venues. We played like the Greek Theater in LA, like places that size. Wow. And Keith had one of those tiny, those tiny little orange amps that it's about the size of a quarter. It's tiny, and so everybody in their band was coming up on stage, and we had a mic, and it sounded massive at the Greek. So everybody in Union Station's coming up like taking pictures of themselves with it because they thought it was so funny to see an amp of that size on such a huge stage, and it sounded awesome. It sounded perfect.
Yeah.
It sounded like a stack. So, I mean, I guess it's like, at this point, like the pedal amps are really big, and those things are really getting very convincing.
Yeah, they really are. I've heard really good things about the orange. I think it's called the Terror Stamp. Maybe that's the one you're talking about.
No, his was actually just one of those little, it was one of those little, like it looks like a mini amp, but it's the size of, it's the size of your phone almost.
Okay, that's so crazy.
Yeah,
it's so crazy what you can do now.
I know,
but it's not just now. What a lot of people don't realize is like a vintage like Rat pedal, the LM308s that are in there. The reason why those things have so much volume, well, one of the reasons is because those are actually not designed to be in a pedal. Those were designed to be amplifiers,
right,
for for something like that. And so that's why Rats have so much gain. And like I've worked with people before where we're trying to like combine different things with the Rat circuit, and it's like, okay, well, we're gonna have to tone down the Rat circuit because it's destroying everything else in its path.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's destruction in those things. I mean, it's the same thing with those old pig noses too. You know, they're just great. The way that they break up maybe doesn't sound great in a room, but you put that thing on a recording and it just sings.
Yeah, I plugged, those little smoky amps, the ones they build them in a pack of cigarettes. Or
right,
whatever.
Exactly.
I plugged one of those into a 212, and I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, it's a great
what
trick.
Is this?
It's a great trick. Or using compression for distortion, things like that. I love that as well. You know, just overloading compression is a big. That's a big way that I would get overdrive instead of using a distortion pedal. Or I really like that sound, especially with bass. So you can do amazing things with compression in bass.
I rediscovered that trick recently. I got a Ground Control Audio Serpens compressor in, and I found like hitting that with a clean boost is like really pummeling it. It's a great overdrive all of a sudden.
Right.
I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah,
it's a good trick.
Yeah, it's a great trick. It's one of those things that you pick up by watching other people do stuff. I feel like I'm a student of it. I'm big into everything sounding awesome, but I'm also a big fan of trying to find an organic way to do it. And I guess a little old school, like I said. You know, I want to use pedals or or just try to find a way to get my guitar into my amp to sound interesting. You know, without anything too.
Right.
So I think, honestly, there's so much you can do with so little. Like, you know, people who have those massive pedal boards, I understand, like, you need different things for different songs, but I've always been a fan of, like, maybe one or two pedals at a time, and each one of them really making a difference in the sound instead of, like, going through this massive signal chain. So I'll tear my pedal board apart pretty much while I'm recording.
Yeah, I like it all. You know, some people really get down on the big pedal boards, and some people are like, you just need to go straight into the amp. That's the only way. And I'm just like, there's not a wrong way to do it.
I'm with you. I live in that same world where I'm like, some days you just want every pedal turned on, and other days you just want nothing. But I think it's good to have a lot of choices and then decide what you want for the right moment. It's all about how you use it. It's not about what you do, what you have.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So you talked about that Strat.
Yeah.
Are there any other electrics in the arsenal?
Oh yeah, I have a great Les Paul that I use a lot, and I have my favorite is this other Strat that I have. That's it's a 1980 walnut Strat, which is pretty much like one of those, like, it is the most Stratty guitar ever. It sounds exactly like you would expect, you know, a vintage Strat to sound like, but it's not. I mean, it's semi-vintage. I guess it is vintage at this point, 1980, but it just sounds perfect, exactly what you'd want, and that thing has never failed me. It sounds perfect in every single mix. It's always in tune, and like no matter what pedals it just plays well with pedals and plays well clean. It's like you can't mess it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Strat is one I've always struggled with. It's something that, like, I don't have a Strat. Out of all the things I have, I don't have a Strat.
Sure.
And the ones that I want are not necessarily what people who are big Strat fans are like find desirable. Like, I want a 70s style big headstock. You know, like I don't like the little headstock on the Strat as well. I like the big one. And people think I'm crazy because that's not what Gilmour used. How dare you?
Right. Well, you know, I don't think I think the whole point is, and I think what I'm trying to get at, and it seems like we're in the same camp, is like you find the tools that you think are going to work best for what you do. You know, and that's a thing.
Definitely.
Like, I love guitars, and I honestly have over 30 probably at home that I switch in and out for something different all the time. But and there are a bunch of Strats because I find that they're really diverse. But every once in a while, you know, a Les Paul is perfect or a Tele is perfect. And I don't have a whole lot of, like, you know, those weirdo guitars, but I do use a lot of 12 string, and I use a lot of and I use a lot of acoustic to do different things with it, you know. So sometimes even acoustic to go through amps can do really, really cool things.
Do you have and this is never a fair question, but I recently had to answer this in real time for myself, but do you have a number one guitar, like Burning Building. This is the one
I
I'm
actually
grabbing.
do. I grew up playing this guild that my aunt got brand new when she was a kid in like '66. And so, yeah,
Oh,
it's the
man.
number one, and I still have it. It's the guitar I learned how to play on. It was impossible to play when I was a kid, but since then I've had it set up a million times, and that's the guitar that I used on every single Good Old War song ever. And it's always the first thing I put down, and it got to a point where it looks insane. So if you look up any picture of me, pretty much you'll find me playing that guitar, and it got to a point where I couldn't take it on tour anymore. So I tattooed it on my arm instead. But at home, it's on every single song.
That's so cool. You tattooed it on your arm. That's some
It's
dedication.
the greatest guitar. I'm just, those things where you're just like, how did I get so lucky to have this thing?
Yes. I know. Yes, I know exactly what
Yeah,
you're talking about. I'm currently like furiously Googling. Oh, there it is.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's an
There's the
F-35.
And there's the
Yeah,
tattoo.
yeah. It's kind of weird because you see me playing it with the tattoo of the same guitar right next to it.
I kind of love that. That's kind of amazing. What a cool thing. I love things that have a family history. That my number one similarly is my grandpa's Les Paul
Oh, there you
Jr.
go.
So it's like I have a lot of really awesome guitars, and all of mine. I'm not somebody that goes through guitars very much. I know a lot of people who are constantly rotating through things, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not really how I do things.
Mhm.
I'm always trying to like fill a gap. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have, like right now I'm thinking like I don't have a Gretsch.
Yeah.
And I could use a Gretsch in my life. And so then I would be on the hunt for the Gretsch that I really, really want, or whatever that happens to be. Like for a while it was a Telecaster.
Yeah. And you can also modify guitars you have. Like I had this kind of medium level Tele that I've had forever. And it had this pearloid pick. It's purple, basically. It's kind of like a bluish purple, and it had this pearloid pickup. And I just never played it. I didn't like looking at it or anything. So I got it kind of reset up with the Bigsby and a black pick guard, and now it looks and plays awesome. Ooh. And it's something I never had before, So it lives in this world that I got new pickups put in, and it does that. It does the thing that I wanted that guitar to do when I bought it. So that's the thing. Like you don't necessarily have to go out and buy a million new guitars. You can, if you have a guitar that you don't play, you probably could turn it into something you would love.
Yeah, and I'm going through this struggle right now. It's the epitome of first world problems. First of all, it's not a struggle, but like I have this Rickenbacker 360 that I've had for years. And when I first got it, I really liked it. I especially like it like with a bunch of fuzz and things like that. But out of all the guitars I have, it's definitely the one I play the least. And the one that I have like the least connection to. I bought it because it was a smoking deal from a business that was, or a guitar shop that was going out of business here locally. And I was like, I always wanted a Ricky. That's a smoking deal. I'll buy it. And I just don't play it very much. And I currently have a guy online. I was publicly debating about getting rid of it on Instagram. And a guy was like, because I said, I need a new computer. He's like, I'll buy you a whatever computer you need if you send me that Rickenbacker. And I'm like, am I going to regret this?
Yeah, dude.
Because I could save my money and get a computer myself, but I also don't really play this guitar that much. It's a weird internal struggle. I've only ever gotten rid of one guitar. And
so
what
have you decided? Because I'm with you. I don't know how to get rid of guitars. And I don't even know how to get rid of pedals, to be honest with you. Like I have a collection of pedals that things that I will probably never use again. But I kind of look at guitars as one of those things that I'll be able to pass on, and they're almost like a retirement in some way, especially if you have nice ones. They all become vintage by the time you're old.
That's right. That's true. I would have never considered something from 1980
right
vintage.
Exactly. It doesn't feel it, but
but now
exactly.
It kind of
I mean, by the time we're in our 60s, that's a valuable guitar.
That's right. Well, and especially like this keeps coming up on the podcast because it's a recent phenomenon, but there's been a reoccurring theme since I bought my Les Paul Custom, which is a 1981. I've found that there's sort of like a group of in the know people I don't know how this happened, but like that found out that amidst all the chaos of late 70s, early 80s Gibsons, where there's, it's
Right.
hit or miss, the Les Paul customs from that era somehow are consistently fantastic. And with the recent release of the Adam Jones 79 Silverburst, which everyone just woke up and decided that their 1980s Silverburst is now worth 15 grand after that.
That's amazing
that
because
came out.
his style. I mean, like you have to play a very specific kind of music to use a green guitar like that.
I know. It's kind of crazy. I love it. But like, it's just funny how the market responded. As soon as those were launched, you look on Reverb and, mine's white, so it doesn't fit the mold quite exactly. But even mine is worth double, according to what Reverb prices are, worth double what I paid for a few years ago. And I'm like, but I was like, does it? And with this comes up into conversation with some other gear stuff going on lately, but I'm like, but does it matter? If you're never going to sell it, does it matter what it's worth?
Yeah, exactly. Like I'll give it to my kids
or
something one day if I have kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're
lucky. If they're
if
real
they're
good kids. So who are some of your musical influences? We've talked a lot about what you do and how you approach things, but where did you get
it's from? So all over the place. So yeah, I mean, obviously I grew up with the big ones. Everything starts with the Beatles in my life and kind of ends with the Beatles as well. In my family, I don't think that my dad actually knows that another band exists. So I don't even know if he knows that they have another album other than Sgt. Pepper. It was like such a huge event in his life. So that was the beginning of everything for me, and still is kind of the beginning and end. But obviously from there, you spread out to a whole bunch of other great bands, and the Stones came first, and I learned a million things about how to write and how to record songs from them, and Zeppelin and all the great classic rock bands. Pretty much, I had a very kind of open mind about that stuff, and then. When I really started getting aware, it was exactly when the whole Seattle scene started. So Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, those bands were massive for me. And then as I grew up, I started getting into country music and learning about Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard and the acoustic side of things and how you can make an acoustic sound, pretty heavy. And I thought that was always a really cool thing. If you listen to you listen to Mommy Tried, the second the song starts, you're like, oh, that acoustic sounds amazing. And that was a bit of a rabbit hole for me for a long time. I just got really into how fingerpicking players, do it without having to be flashy and being able to sit right at the top of the mix. So I got really into country music in that way, old school country music and outlaw country music. And then that sent me over to bluegrass. And so Tony Rice and all those guys, and obviously the whole newgrass revival, all those guys in those bands, they were all really influential. And at the same time, I was always really into punk bands, when I was in high school and stuff like that. So Bad Religion and NoFX and bands like that too. And then I got really into acoustic and instrumental guitar players like Tommy Emmanuel and Leo Kottke has been a big one. Michael Hedges, people like that have been massive in my life as well. So it's really kind of all over the place. As long as it has a guitar in it, my life revolves around it.
That's what I love to hear. That I like diverse stuff. I feel like you and I could go down the country rabbit hole and maybe
why not?
Because why not? But I mean, Merle Haggard. Sometimes I go back and forth. My wife is also a huge fan of that stuff as well. And she's said before that she thinks if she could only listen to one artist for the rest of her life, that Merle Haggard would be it. And I have a hard time arguing with that.
It's more of a kind of a pleasure for me. I kind of treat it as dessert. For me, if I had to choose anything, it would be somewhere between Paul Simon and the Beatles, probably. Just because I can't get sick of it. I've been listening to it for 30 years. It's still the best.
I mean, it's hard to argue with, I honestly don't know if I could answer that question. I mean, today I could. Right
this second. Yeah.
Today, I mean, for me,
Danny Black's new album, Black Rhino.
It's going to be Danny Black 100%. I'm never going to stop listening to it for the rest of my life. You're going to get so many streams out of me.
Oh, please. I will cash that nickel.
Oh, you're gonna get hundreds of streams. You'll get at least a fraction of a cent from this.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how much money musicians are making right now.
Oh yes, they're just rolling in it. Just rolling in
Yeah.
it.
Especially without tour, we're really rocking right now.
Oh yeah.
So, I was thinking this is actually I think it's kind of good. I feel like it's kind of like a reset for the people that do this, because if you stick with it now and it's still like you're really true, you really are, you belong here.
Right.
You belong in the music industry, because I feel like it got to the point where like everybody's like, oh, I got a laptop, so now I have GarageBand, so I'm going to make an album and put it out. And it's like, that's great. I think everybody should have that opportunity. But at the same time, there's people that really, they live for this and it's everything for them. And it might be nice to kind of be able to sift through some of the stuff that isn't as genuine.
Yeah, it's a weird time for sure. I mean, yeah, like you said, if you can get through this, you're a real soldier, because this is a rough time. But it actually took me a while, because I don't like make music as a career per se, but it took me a long time to realize, and listeners are probably getting tired of me saying this over and over again, that I actually do work in the music industry. And I had people point it out to me. I was like, I don't work in the music industry. I'm a podcaster and I talk about gear, primarily. And it's like, well, what is that used for? And who are you talking to? And what events are you attending? And what, it's like, oh, I guess it is the music industry. It's just hard for me to wrap my mind around, because I never actually thought it was going to be possible for me. It's all that I've ever wanted to do is work around musicians and be musical, but I never thought that it was going to happen. It wasn't a career path that I was pursuing with that kind of mindset of like being a guitar player or being a working musician or a producer or anything that people traditionally think of. And so I've taken this really weird side road, which I'm very thankful for, but it's sometimes hard for me to process.
Well, I would say that exactly what you just expressed is being genuine. Like that's the whole point. If you weren't going into it being like, I'm going to make $1 million, you went into it because you were just into it. You wanted to do something. You didn't really think of it as some sort of career path or, this is what I'm going to do with my life. It just your life led you here. That's to me, that's what I want to be around, and I think that musicians, in general, are just excited about people that are just really, really real about it. And they're doing it for all the right reasons.
It's definitely not something anyone should get into, whether you're going to start making pedals or whether you're going to start writing songs. It's not something anyone should get into with the idea that they're going to wake up and be, Brad Paisley. Because there's only one Brad Paisley.
Right. And that's the other thing. I mean, you said it too, because you're gonna, no matter what, I don't know who anybody thinks they are, but nobody defines themselves the way that they expect. Everybody, when they're kids, they think they're going to be Kurt Cobain or Jimmy Page, but you're you. So you're going to be a different thing, and that's the thing. Like I grew up definitely thinking I was going to be something, and my life and music have taken so many different diverging paths that I don't even know, I'm me. And that's a great place to be. And that's the other thing. So like you were saying about, putting out albums, 2 instrumental albums, and doing all this music with Anthony and doing the music with Good Old War and making film music and things of that sort. I think that I've always been a fan of musicians and artists that do what they feel like, where their muse takes them. And they don't really and some people are going to, if you listen to Neil Young, like some people are Crazy Horse fans and they will not listen to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. It just won't happen, and so some people are going to love my instrumental stuff and not like my rock stuff with me singing on it. And some people are going to do the opposite, and some people will like everything. But you just can't think like that. You just have to make what comes out. And that's the kind of artist that I wanted to be and the people that I look up to.
One thing I like to ask people who have had a lot of experience like you have is, what would you recommend to somebody, like, say they are starting out as an artist and they want to do this as a career? Do you have any words of advice for them?
Yeah. Just practice a lot. Try to get good forget about everything else. Like, just get good, and then also learn how to work with people. I think that's been really big for me, is just learning how to be friendly and professional, but also be and prompt and reliable, and then also just trying to be really good and not waste anybody's time. So if somebody wants me to play on their record, I'll try to get it back right away. Or if it's in the days when we actually go work on stuff together, to be the one that people could trust to know the song when I showed up, and kind of help them with arrangements and things of that sort. Just know your stuff, I think, is more important than actually working towards any kind of like financial or professional goal.
Yeah, the one thing I would add to that, and I think this is true regardless of your career, whether it's music or it's something else, answer your email.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Be professional and quick, and be on your stuff. It's really important. It's really important. I completely agree.
Yeah, I mean it's a thing sometimes where it's like trying to wrangle somebody for a show that they initially acted really excited about it, and it's like, I got to email you 17 times, and then after a while it's like, do you really want to do this or do you not? And sometimes it comes back and they're like, oh yeah, I really do want to do this. I just got sidetracked with whatever, and that I believe that, but I have a lot of emails. I have a lot of emails, and I run 6 different social media accounts.
Wow.
I have a lot of things to sift through, and I miss stuff. I definitely do. I promise I'm not perfect, but I do catch 90% of it. So when it's that inconsistent, and maybe I'm vocalizing because there's something like that going on right now. But like, it's like, okay, well, if you're not into it, I'm not going to be offended if you don't reply, or if you don't want to do it. But just let me know so I can stop bothering you.
Right. Cool. And I think that goes for all. If you are self-employed in any way, just be a pro. And be nice. That's all. And you know what? I 9 out of 10 people that I meet, and I'm sure you're the same way, that are good at what they do and are kind and easy to work with. So I think you have to be, and people know that now.
Yeah, I think word gets around.
It does. I mean, it's not like it used to be. I feel like I used to go to shows and like the bouncers were all jerks, and you'd feel super unwelcome, especially in Philly. It was scary to go to a show because the people were not nice. The people who worked at the venues and stuff like that. And that world is gone. All those places are gone now. So now it's like everybody, there's Yelp, and there's we can rate you now. So to be good and it should be pretty natural. It shouldn't really be too hard to be easy to be around.
Yeah, the world has definitely changed, and that's actually another thing that might be kind of interesting to talk about in these last few minutes here, is from my perspective, how I never was in the music industry, and now, well, not in 2020 obviously, but just prior to 2020, I was like, oh, I'm starting to get to go backstage to interview people. I'm getting to see behind the curtain in ways that I never imagined that I would.
Right.
And you hear all these VH1 True stories and whatever else, that's all this debauchery that people used to get into back in the day, and I'm like, that guy's eating carrots.
Yep.
That girl's eating chips and playing on her phone, and there's nothing going on. There's nothing weird going on back here.
Yeah. There's 2 sides to that. One, the internet is going to be a lot harder on people too, and to get into those kinds of debauchery, it's not a good look anymore. It doesn't look cool to be like a jerk rock star like it used to for some reason, which has always been one of those things where I've always been like, really, that's cool to like objectify women and things like that. It's never seemed very cool to me. But that said, then there's also the fact that like people have learned that if you want to actually survive on the road, you actually have to take care of yourself. We don't all have big jets. We're at this point, you have to.
Nobody does.
Yeah, you actually have to, get some rest and take care of yourself and keep your voice in check if you're going to go play a show. And you can have fun. You can go out and have some drinks and have a good time. But like when it comes to like before the show, there's not people getting like crazy wild anymore because they're trying to actually have a chance at surviving this game.
Yeah, it was really funny. I had this moment, and this was quite a while ago at this point, but I was hanging out with Frank from MyChem when he was doing his tour with the Future Violence, and he just wanted me to come by and bring a bunch of gear and nerd out because he loves all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was warming up, for sound check, and he had these vocal things he was doing, and I was just chilling, hanging out with everybody, and he's like, "I know this is really rock and roll, right?"
Right. Yeah. Honestly, like that's like my favorite stuff though. Like especially when Good Old War first started, we would every single show, and we did this up until like, I think pretty much every show for like the first like 6 or 7 years of the band, we'd get together and we did a vocal warm up together with my, I'd sit there with the guitar and I'd play scales and stuff, and we would sing together, and it got us super locked in. I really have like very fond memories of doing that. So I know it doesn't sound very rock and roll, but it brought us really close.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to do it. You have to. Like that's if you want to survive, you got to.
Yeah, and people people want to hear a good show. Give them a good show. That's the only people don't care. Oh man, I totally like got so wasted backstage. Like, no, they want to hear a good show. They don't care what you did backstage.
Nobody wants that. Nobody really wants. No one's like, man, that was so great that Danny got hammered and came on the stage and fell down. Like that was wonderful.
Right.
That was worth my money.
Yeah, they'll be bummed that they paid for that show. That's the thing. So yeah, I mean, have a high standard up there, because that's that 30 minutes to 2 hours that you get to play is the best part of the whole day, and that's what you waited for. So go up there and be a pro.
Nice. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're getting down to the last few here, and we've got a few classic questions to get into. But before I do that, this is your time to shine. This is your time to say whatever you want to say. You can put a billboard out there for a few thousand people right now. This is your chance to do it.
Oh, I'm on the spot. I would say, please check out my new record. I'm super proud of it, and I think that it is music for pretty much anybody that likes something that's gonna maybe make them think a little bit, and hopefully it'll get you dancing. It's called Black Rhino, and it's out everywhere now. You can also pre-order it. Yeah, you could also pre-order it. I'll send over a link.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Of course. All right. Getting into the last few here. This is a question that I started asking. Yeah, it's been around for a while now, but I'm always surprised. I thought it was going to take more thought for most people, but most people kind of have the answer chambered, and I've been very surprised by this. So let's see what you think.
I hope I do.
You might. Let's see. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
My favorite Boss pedal is probably the tuner, the TU2.
Classic response.
Yeah, I grew up with the flanger. I actually love that thing. Although people are like, "What is flanger?" Or a chorus. I used to love the chorus too. But I mean, I was a David Gilmour fan my entire life. There's never been a moment when I haven't been a fan of his. And he uses that flanger, and it sounds awesome.
Dude, I have one. I have an original one with the black knobs and everything, and
the
silver screw, and it sounds awesome.
It sounds great. It really like thickens up when you play solos. If you use it classy, you're gonna get something pretty cool.
It's a very nice pedal, and it's one of the Boss pedals, vintage Boss pedals that are relatively affordable.
Right? Yeah, because nobody likes flanger.
I love flanger. I'm a big fan, but so I'm glad.
Too.
I'm glad I have a kindred spirit here.
Yeah, fellow flanger.
Yeah, BF2. I think they're usually. I think I paid like $120 for mine with the box.
Wow.
So
yeah. I probably got mine for like $60 back in the day. And I mean, I also still use those DD5s and DD4s and even DD3s. I think those are still great too. So I like the delay pedals as well. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to bother Yoshi over at Boss for a sponsorship, since I asked that on every episode. I never really thought about that till just now.
If they start sending you some pedals, you know who to call.
That's right. I got some people over there. One time I almost stole Yoshi's Uber accidentally at NAMM, but that's a story that people have heard before, so I'll tell you.
In NAMM?
Yeah.
It was rough out there.
It's always rough at NAMM, the mean streets of Anaheim, California.
Right.
All right. Here's the last question. This is the one where it gets a little dicey. It gets a little controversial. And,
Oh, sounds scary.
careers are made or broken with this question quite often.
All right.
What kind of pizza do you like?
Do you want to know the truth? I've never met a pizza I didn't like. I think
All right.
I think the worst pizza is better than almost any other food. This is actually an ongoing thing for me. I love pizza, but if I really had to choose, I'd probably say like mushrooms and peppers.
Yeah. Solid. I like that. That sounds
But
good.
I honestly could eat any. You could put anything on a pizza and I'd be like, this is delicious.
Great, it's a pizza. This is
Exactly.
wonderful.
Something about the word pizza just it perks me up.
It's not very often that if you're at a get together or something and that someone's like, "Hey, who wants pizza?" Everyone's like, "No."
Yeah, everybody's like,
No,
well,
I
I
don't
think
want that.
I think it's cheat day today. All of a sudden, you had me at pizza.
It was yesterday too, but
Right.
now it is again.
Exactly.
I like it. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. This has been a really great chat. This was a lot of fun.
Man, what an honor. Thank you so much.
Very, very fun, man. All right, everybody. For Danny, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I don't know if that's possible. I really, really, really enjoyed talking with Danny. In fact, I enjoyed it so much that we did some more over on Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com/tonemob, for just $5 a month, you can get extra episodes beamed directly to your ears every week, usually in the form of an extended conversation with that week's guest. There's a ton of content over there. I don't even know how many episodes we have over on Patreon, but there are hours, literally hours and hours of extra content that you're missing out on over there. In fact, probably some of the best episodes that have ever been recorded are over there on the Patreon stream. So big shout out to all the Patreon subscribers. Got a bunch of new ones in lately, and they've been amazing. So thank you to everyone that's supporting this show. And if you can't do that, I know times are weird right now. I get it. I totally get it. But what I would really appreciate is if you could share this with a friend. If you have a guitar playing friend, please share this with them. Put it on your social media. Get it out there for people. Every download matters. It really does. And to close things out, you can text me if you want. You can text me directly at 503-751-8577. And everyone who is on that list, because it is a list of sorts, gets to text directly with me. I sent out a recipe last week. I sent out some things that might help independent contractors and small businesses. It's really the channel for all the random stuff that I get asked about sometimes, and I don't really have another feed or means to elaborate further. So shoot me a text at 503-751-8577. And if you haven't heard the episode with my good friend Devon Blue that I dropped last week, it's a bonus episode. We go into some of the other things you can expect to see over on that text chat feed thing. So that is the spot. I think you're really going to like it. It's very interesting. It's a very kind of off-the-wall experiment. We're taking some of the control back from the algorithms. And I promise, I will never be sharing that information with anyone ever for any purpose, ever. Like, ever. It's just a conversation between myself and the people who would like to talk to me. So if that sounds cool, shoot me a text. It should be a lot of fun. And if you decide it's not for you, all you got to do is text STOP to that same number, and they'll stop. So that's all for now. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style. Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.